The wind cut through the Wyoming mountains like a blade that November morning. I stood on my cabin porch, Winchester in hand, watching two dark shapes crawl through the snow toward me. You ever look into a woman's eyes and see her counting down the hours until you're dead? I have. Right there in that storm, the old Cheyenne woman and her daughter, dragging themselves through knee-deep snow like wounded animals. When the young one lifted her head and saw me standing there with my rifle, something flickered in her black eyes. Not hope, something colder. She'd watched too many men die on her account. And here I was, another fool walking straight into the same trap. 5 years I'd been living on this mountain. Half a decade since I buried my Rosanna and little Josiah in the hard ground behind this cabin. 5 winters of talking to ghosts and drinking whiskey until the memories stopped screaming. Now here were two strangers bleeding toward my door, dragging me back into a world I'd tried to forget. I should have turned around, should have bolted my door and let the mountain take them. That's what solitude teaches you. Don't get involved. Don't care. Don't let anyone close enough to hurt you when they're gone. But the old woman reached toward me with trembling fingers. Please, blood on her lips, her hand gripping my coat like a drowning woman grabbing driftwood. My daughter needs a man who won't die for her. Strange words from a stranger, but something in her voice stopped my boots in the snow. I carried them both inside. The old woman weighed nothing at all, light as kindling, 55 years of hard living burning away in fever. The daughter followed quiet as shadow, watching my every move with those ancient eyes. My name is Silas Cutter. I was 38 years old that winter. Former Union cavalry scout, former husband, former father, current ghost haunting my own life on a frozen mountainside where nobody came and nobody cared. Back in '69, I buried my wife Rosanna and my boy Josiah after 3 men broke into our home while I was selling furs in Cheyenne City. I hunted those men for 6 months, found them one by one, made them pay slow, but killing them didn't bring my family back. Just left me emptier than before. So I came up here to wait for death, and death had been taking its sweet time. The daughter knelt beside her mother, hands moving quick and sure as she checked the wound. 26 years old, I guessed, maybe younger. Hard to tell with that weathered look in her eyes. A knife slash crossed the old woman's belly, deep and vicious. Someone had tried to gut her like a deer. "Who's hunting you?" I asked. The young woman looked up. No fear in her face, just exhaustion and something darker underneath. "Men who want me dead." "How many?" "Enough to kill you if you help us." I liked her honesty. Most folks sugarcoat the poison they're asking you to swallow. "What's your name?" "Morning Star. My mother is Gray Feather." She paused. "We lived with the Lakota for many years after my father died. He was Cheyenne, but my mother moved us to be near her sister's people. That explained the mixed heritage, Cheyenne blood.
You can still leave before trouble finds this cabin.
Trouble already found me. I'm done running.
Staying means you might not see another spring.
Then we
Lakota upbringing. I nodded and went to boil water for cleaning the wound. Behind me, Morningstar spoke again. "My father was a translator for the army. White man. He gave my mother an English name when they married." Something cold crept down my spine. I didn't turn around. "What name?" "Rosanna." The pot slipped from my hands, clattered against the stove. Water hissed on hot iron like a snake warning me to run. Rosanna. Same name carved into that wooden cross on the hill. Same name I whispered to the darkness every night before sleep took me. I turned slow and looked at the old woman lying on my bed. 55 years old, dying, named after my dead wife, or maybe my dead wife had been named after women like her. Either way, God was playing jokes that weren't funny. Morningstar watched me with knowing eyes. "Is something wrong?" I stared at the faded photograph on my shelf. Rosanna and Josiah, frozen in time. Two faces I'd never see smile again. My wife, I said, the words scraping out like rusty nails. Her name was Rosanna, too. Morning Star's expression shifted. Understanding. Maybe even compassion. The spirits move in strange patterns, she said quietly. Perhaps this is not coincidence. Perhaps not. Perhaps it was the universe giving me one last chance to save a Rosanna when I'd failed to save my own. Or perhaps it was just cruel luck. Either way, I picked up the pot and started again. Gray Feather woke 3 days later. The fever had broken, but something worse burned in her eyes. The knowledge that time was running out. She grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and pulled me close. You need to understand what you've taken into your home. I listened without speaking. Outside, wind howled against the walls. 3 men have died because of my daughter's beauty, not because she did anything wrong, not because she tempted them, because something in her face makes men forget themselves, makes them fight, makes them kill. She coughed. Blood flecked her lips. Running Wolf was the last. 28 years old. A Lakota warrior, respected by all. He stabbed his closest friend in a rage over my daughter. Then another man challenged Running Wolf, and they killed each other in front of the whole village. The tribal council blamed Morning Star. They said she was bad medicine, a curse walking in human skin. They cast us out. Gray Feather's grip tightened. But Running Wolf's brother wouldn't accept exile as punishment enough. Stone Bear swore to bring my daughter's head back to honor his brother's spirit. The knife wound. Stone Bear's men? White bounty hunters he hired. They caught us on the river trail 2 days ago. I fought long enough for Morningstar to escape, then ran myself. She touched her bandaged belly. They'll follow. They always follow. How much is the bounty? Morningstar's voice came from the corner. $500, dead or alive. $500. Enough money to make desperate men do desperate things. Gray Feather pulled me closer still. Her eyes burned into mine. You wear your wife's name like a wound that won't heal. I see it every time you look at me. The way you flinch when you hear my English name. I tried to pull away. She held fast. You're already dead, Silas Cutter. Dead inside where it counts. Just a ghost wearing skin, waiting for the rest of you to catch up. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Maybe that's what my daughter needs. A man that beauty can't kill, because there's no—
Don't rush. Breathe, then aim carefully.
My hands aren't shaking.
Good. Aim with your breath, not with anger.
Then teach me how to survive.
nothing left in you to die. I finally broke her grip, walked to the window, stared at the snow falling soft and white. Behind me, Gray Feather spoke one last time. Keep her alive. That's all I ask. Whatever else happens, keep my daughter alive. I didn't answer, couldn't find words for what was churning inside me. But my hand found the Winchester leaning against the wall, gripped it tight. That was answer enough. Gray Feather died on the fourth morning, slipped away quiet as morning mist, holding her daughter's hand and humming an old Cheyenne song her own mother had taught her. Morning Star didn't cry, just sat there for an hour, braiding and unbraiding her mother's gray hair while the fire crackled. I built the coffin from pine boards I'd been saving. Don't know what I'd been saving them for. Maybe exactly this. We buried her on the eastern hill, right next to Rosanna and Josiah. 3 graves now in the frozen ground. 2 women sharing the same English name. 1 child who never got to grow up. The sun was setting when we finished piling stones on the mound. Morning Star stood looking down at her mother's resting place, face unreadable in the fading light. "What happens now?" she asked. I cleaned the dirt from my hands with snow. "You could head to Cheyenne City, find work, start fresh somewhere. No one knows your history. Is that what you want?" The question hung between us like gun smoke. I thought about my empty cabin, my bottles of whiskey, my long nights talking to ghosts who never answered back. "No," I said. It ain't what I want. Then I stay. No promises, no speeches. Just two damaged people deciding to face whatever came next, standing side by side. A week after the burial, I rode south to Amos Whitfield's trading post, 15 miles through frozen wilderness. But I needed information more than I needed comfort. Amos was 60 years old, missing 3 fingers from a Confederate cannonball at Shiloh, and the only man within 100 miles I trusted completely. We'd served together in the war, watched friends die together, learned what each other was made of in ways that peacetime never teaches. He poured whiskey for both of us and leaned back in his chair. Trouble found you, Silas. 4 men came through 3 days ago, asking about a young Cheyenne woman, offering money for information. Who's leading them? Jedediah Vane. The whiskey turned to ice in my stomach. I set the glass down hard enough to crack it. Vane still breathing? Breathing and still collecting bounties. 45 years old now, gray in the beard, but the same cold bastard he always was. Amos studied my face. You know the name. Know it? I'd carried that name like a splinter in my soul since Tennessee. April 1864, Fort Pillow. I was 23 years old. Union cavalry, captured after a Reb ambush scattered our unit. Jedediah Vane was a Confederate captain commanding the garrison. What happened next still woke me screaming some nights. 300 Union soldiers surrendered that day, laid down their weapons, raised their hands, believed the rules of war would protect them. Vane gave the order to kill them all. Most were colored troops from the 6th U.S. Heavy Artillery, shot in the back while kneeling. Bayoneted where they lay, burned alive in their tents. I watched it happen from under a pile of corpses, blood soaking through my uniform, listening to men scream for mercy that never came. 6 hours I laid there, 6 hours of gunshots and begging, and Vane's laughter cutting through it all. 47 of us survived Fort Pillow. I was one of them. And since that day, I'd wondered where Jedediah Vane had disappeared to when the war ended. Now I knew. He'd become a bounty hunter, still killing for money, just with different excuses. He's got 2 hunters riding with him, Amos continued, and a Lakota warrior. Stone Bear, they called him. Young one, 32 maybe, full of...
If I stay, I won't be a burden.
You won't be.
This mountain already took enough from me.
Then let it give something back. All right, you stay.
Righteous anger about his dead brother. How far behind? Day and a half, maybe less if they push hard. I stood. I need ammunition. 44-40 and 45 long Colt. Everything you can spare. Amos reached under his counter and started pulling boxes. You ain't thinking of running. No. Silas. He stopped and looked me dead in the eye. Vane's killed more men than cholera. Those bounty hunters riding with him ain't green boys, and Stone Bear won't stop until someone's dead. You know how Lakota are about blood debts. I know. So what's your play? I gathered the ammunition, checked my weapons, felt something cold and certain settling into my bones. I'm going to finish what should have ended at Fort Pillow, a decade and a half too late, but better than never. I told Morningstar everything that night, about Vane, about the massacre, about the sounds I still heard in my nightmares. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she walked to the window and stared at the darkness beyond. You want to kill him? Since I was 23 years old, just never knew where to find him. And now he's coming to you. Yes. She turned, firelight painted gold across her face. Then we don't run. We fight. I showed her how to handle the Colt, how to load it, aim it, breathe before squeezing the trigger. She learned fast, hands steady, eyes calm. This wasn't her first brush with death. We spent the next day turning my cabin into a fortress, nailed boards across the windows, filled water barrels in case they tried to burn us out, stacked sandbags by the main door, 80 rounds of ammunition, 2 Winchesters, 3 Colts, 1 Bowie knife, against 4 killers coming to collect a bounty. Long odds, but I'd faced worse at Fort Pillow and survived. They came 2 nights later. I'd been awake for 30 hours, watching, waiting, running on coffee and old memories. The fire had burned low when I heard it, a sound that didn't belong, metal clicking against stone, footsteps muffled by snow but not muffled enough. I peered through my shooting gap, 4 shadows moving from the tree line, spreading out to surround the cabin. Vane had figured I'd be ready for a daylight attack, so he came in that gray hour before dawn, when exhaustion dulls the senses and fires burn low. Smart man, but not smart enough. I shook Morningstar awake. They're here, southeast corner, behind the woodpile. Stay out of the firelight. She grabbed her Colt and moved to her position without a word. One shadow separated from the others and approached the back door, carrying something in his hand, a torch. I tracked him through the gap. 50 feet, 40, 30, he raised his arm to throw. I fired through the wooden door. The Winchester roared in the darkness. Outside, a man screamed and fell. The torch dropped into the snow. From somewhere in the trees, a voice I'd never forgotten. Silas Cutter! Vane's laugh echoed through the cold air. Same laugh I'd heard at Fort Pillow while men begged for their lives. I remember you, boy, the one who played dead under all those bodies. All these years, and you still haven't learned when to quit. I chambered another round. All these years, and you still haven't learned how to die, Vane. Give me the girl. Walk away. This ain't your fight. It became my fight when you set foot on my mountain.
Does it feel different now?
Not victory, just quiet.
You're not a ghost if you can still protect something.
Then don't let me go back to being one.
Silence. They were regrouping, waiting for dawn. 1 down, 3 to go. Morningstar's voice came soft from her corner. He's really here. The man from Fort Pillow. He's really here. And tomorrow? I checked my ammunition, listened to the wind, felt something ancient stirring in my chest. Tomorrow we finish this. Dawn broke red as a fresh wound. I counted through my shooting gap, 1 body in the snow by the back door. That left Vane, Stone Bear, and 1 bounty hunter. The bounty hunter made his move first. Came from the east, running low, carrying a torch and kerosene, trying to flush us out with fire. I tracked him. 80 yards, 70. He ducked behind a boulder. 60, 50. He stood to throw. I fired. The bullet took him in the shoulder. He spun, dropped the torch, fell into the snow. Started crawling back toward the trees. 2 left. That's when Stone Bear came. The Lakota warrior had been waiting all night for me to reveal my position. The moment I fired, he moved, came from the west side, hit the weakest point at full speed. Wood exploded inward. Stone Bear rolled through the gap, tomahawk already swinging. I tried to bring the Winchester around. Too slow. The tomahawk knocked my rifle aside. Stone Bear's weight crashed into me. We hit the floor together, his hands finding my throat. 32 years old. Big as a grizzly. Strong as hate. I couldn't breathe. Black spots danced across my vision. For a moment I saw Rosanna's face. Josiah's small hand reaching for mine. Is this how it ends? After everything? Morningstar raised her Colt. I can't shoot. You're too close. Stone Bear snarled in Lakota, squeezing tighter. You die for this witch. Like my brother died. My hand scrambled across my belt, found the Bowie knife. I drove it into his side. Stone Bear roared, his grip loosened. I twisted the blade, yanked it free, stabbed again. Higher, between the ribs. He fell back. Blood poured from his wounds onto my cabin floor. He tried to rise. Couldn't. Morningstar stepped forward, Colt aimed at his head. Stone Bear looked up at her with dying eyes. You are death. Everything you touch dies. Morningstar's voice was steady as stone. Your brother died because he chose to kill his friend instead of walking away. That was his choice, not mine. Stone Bear tried to speak again. Couldn't. His eyes went glassy and still. One left. I picked up my Winchester and walked out the front door. Jedediah Vane stood alone in my yard. 45 years old, gray at the temples. But the same cold eyes I remembered from Tennessee. The wounded bounty hunter had crawled away into the trees. Just me and Vane now. The way it should have been since 1864. A decade and a half, Cutter. His voice was calm, almost friendly. I always wondered what happened to you. Turns out you came up here to live like a hermit. And you kept killing for money. He shrugged. War ends, but killing doesn't. Just got more honest about the payment. He gestured at the cabin. $500 for the girl. Walk away now, I'll forget you were ever here. Can't do that, Vane. Because of Fort Pillow? He laughed. That was war, boy. Following orders. Following orders. I stepped off the porch. 300 men murdered after they surrendered. Shot in the back. Burned alive. And you laughed while they screamed. His smile flickered. You remember that, huh? Every night for 15 years. 6 hours under those bodies. Their blood soaking through my uniform. Your voice giving orders. I walked toward him slow. My right hand hung at my side, but my left was behind my back, gripping Morningstar's Colt. 30 feet between us. 25. 20. Far enough. Vane's fingers twitched toward his holster. You want to settle this proper? Quick draw? 15 feet. Nothing about you has ever been proper, Vane. I drew, not from my hip, from behind my back. Already cocked, already aimed. I fired before his hand touched leather. The bullet punched through his chest. His own shot went wild. Vane staggered, looked down at the blood spreading across his shirt, fell to his knees in the snow. I walked to him, stood over him. You didn't draw fair, he gasped. Fair? I cocked the hammer again. You want to talk about fair to a man who watched you murder 300 prisoners with their hands up? Vane coughed blood. That was different. That was the last time you ever laughed at dying men. I pulled the trigger. Morningstar came out as I stood over Vane's body. Snow had started falling again, soft and white, already covering the blood. It's over, she said. Yes. Does it help? The killing? I looked at Vane's face, at the surprise still frozen there. No, but some things need doing whether they help or not. She took my hand. Her fingers were warm. Come inside, you're bleeding. I let her lead me back to the cabin, stepped over Stone Bear's body, sat by the fire while she cleaned my wounds. What now? She asked. Now we bury the dead, fix the walls, figure out how to live. She finished bandaging my neck. Her hands lingered on my shoulders. Your mother was right, I said quietly. I was already dead, a ghost waiting to catch up with my own ending. And now? I put my hand over hers, felt her pulse beating strong. Now I start learning to live again. We married that spring when the mountain flowers bloomed purple and white on the hillsides. Amos Whitfield performed the ceremony, simple words under an open sky. 4 months later, our son came into the world screaming. We named him Samuel, Samuel Cutter, a new name for a new beginning. 8 months after the fight that ended Vane, summer painted the mountains green. I'd built an addition onto the cabin, a small room facing south with windows to catch the morning light. Morningstar sat on the porch in a rocking chair I'd made, watching Samuel take his first wobbly steps across the wooden planks. Amos rode up the trail on his old mare, dismounted with a grunt. Well, I'll be damned. Silas Cutter, family man. Never thought I'd see the day. Makes 2 of us. He watched Samuel toddle toward his mother's arms. Something softened in his weathered face. She's good for you, Silas. The boy, too. Anyone with eyes can see it. I didn't argue. Couldn't. After Amos left, I stood watching the sunset turn the mountains to gold. Morning Star came to stand beside me. Samuel balanced on her hip. "You're quiet tonight." Thinking about the ones we lost, my Rosanna, your mother, all the people who gave us reasons to keep going. I looked up at the hill where 4 graves now stood. My wife, my son, her mother, and one more I dug myself, for a warrior who died fighting for his brother's honor, wrong as he was. Morning Star leaned into me. Samuel grabbed my finger with his tiny hand. "You're not a ghost anymore," she said. "No, I reckon I'm not." People ask me sometimes why I risked everything for a woman I just met, why I didn't hand her over to Vane and go back to my whiskey. I don't have a pretty answer. All I know is that night in the storm, watching 2 strangers crawl through the snow, I had a choice. Keep being a ghost, or remember what it meant to be a man with something worth protecting. I chose to be a man again, not because I deserved another chance, not because I'd earned it, just because I was tired of being dead and ready to try living. Sometimes that's all it takes. One choice. One moment when you stop running from pain and start walking towards something new. The cabin still stands on that ridge. Smoke rises from the chimney. Inside, there's a woman who taught me that beauty isn't a curse when it's matched with courage. A son learning to walk on the same floor where his father learned to live again. And me, still here, still breathing, still surprised by that some mornings. Healing isn't about forgetting the scars. It's about letting them remind you how strong you had to be to survive. If this story found you tonight, wherever you are, I hope you hear what I'm saying. You don't need permission to start over. You don't need anyone to tell you that you've earned it. You just need to choose, and then fight like hell to keep what you've chosen. That's what the West teaches a man. That's what Morning Star taught me. That's what I'll teach my son. Life doesn't give second chances. You take them. And that's exactly what I did.
The story of the young, mixed-race teacher and the widowed man in the Wild West leaves a clear lesson. Prejudice can make people cruel, but courage and kindness can change an entire town. When she is abandoned in the twilight simply because she is different, we see that injustice needs no reason. It only requires a distorted perspective. Yet she doesn't give up. She chooses to stand firm, chooses knowledge as her weapon, and chooses to persevere in sowing hope through every word. The important lesson is, a person's value lies not in their background, but in what they dare to do when pushed into darkness. The man once lived with hatred, but loss taught him that hatred only erodes the heart. He doesn't say much, but silently repairs the school, carries firewood, and stands up to defend what is right. The 12-year-old boy who longs to learn to read becomes a ray of light that breaks the cycle of hatred. Ultimately, the story reminds us that true progress is built on justice, compassion, and second chances.